Why are you always being a bitch and not happy with what you have?
And what you allow to come in your mind controls your fucking heart. Get up! A man's word right now doesn't mean shit. Imagine if you just have that in your life. You have the truth and you have honor. That everything that comes out of your fucking mouth, you do it. That you do the shit that you said you're gonna do.
Welcome back to the Warrior Week podcast. I am Coach Max. This is our coach, Coach Sam. How you doing today,
Hey,
Coach?
how you doing, man?
Very good. Today, I want to talk about the enemy of greed. And really, I want to start with understanding a man's inability to be okay with what he has and where he's at. Like this needing to want to consume more and more and more.
Good point. I mean, okay. So we take the influence itself, greed, and we have to like unpack it and bring it back to the origin of where it started, right? So greed is a lack of, but a lack of what? A lack of what you have and what you don't have, and so in order to understand where greed came from, we have to look in where things were, right? If you roll back in time, at one point, if this could be a good starting point, at one point, we would eat vegetables and fruits. And then as we evolved, we began producing grains, and grains that produced bread and bread bakery, and from bakery to the past 100 years, which is the entire human industrialization, and where we are today right now, being able to fly, being able to get on a submarine, and the advancement of human industrialization. So we go back and say, what enabled that? And when you look back, it's the gift, it's the God-given gift of commercial transaction that enabled all that. It's a God-given gift of the ability to sell and buy, right? If I can sell and if I can buy, and I have both a role inside of that as per God. I think it's inside of the scripture somewhere in the book of Leviticus. It is mentioned that you shall sell and you shall buy, and not do any wrong in those. Okay, so there's three things that comes up. We're instructed to sell, we're instructed to buy, and we're also instructed to do it right. Not wrong is do right. And so greed now becomes the back door where we want to sell and buy, and basically escape from the back door and get all the benefits. This is when I sell some shit to you, and I'm like, I want 100 benefits and 0 benefits to you. This is the back door. This is greed. I have the gift of buying and selling, God-given gift, and yet I want all the benefits for me. And now this is greed. Or even in the modern day, I feel bad, right? I feel bad. Why don't I keep 99 and I give you 1? I give you 1 out of guilt, out of my own guilt. It's not even for you. It's for me again. So I don't feel that bad. And that's, again, the back door. That's, again, greed, the source of greed, where all the benefits are now mine, not yours, rather than doing it right, which is advancing common welfare. And if you look at the past 100 years and the human industrialization, the century of industrialization, we have advanced human welfare because we did it for each other. And we did it through what? The gift of commercial transaction, which is buying and selling. It is the gift of the buying and selling that was particularly and uniquely given to human. This wasn't given to animals.
Yeah.
This wasn't given to monkeys, and it was given to elephant. It was given to humans. It was given to humans And as a result of that, it gives us an opportunity to imitate God's attribute, God's character inside of that, since we were made in his image. So because it was given only to us, it's part of the fact that God made us in his image. And now that opens a window to imitate his attributes, being honest, dividing the benefits for advancing the common welfare, having mercy. But nowhere in there, greed is there. Nowhere in there, greed is an attribute of God. And so it's the back door. It's where we start going by the back door, and greed comes in and now influences everything about transactions. Take that into a personal transaction, wife and a husband. Yeah. When a man gets greedy, it's because man wants 100% of the benefits, zero benefits for the woman. Or, hey, 99 benefits. By the way, I feel bad for my wife, so here's one benefit, but it's not really for her. It's for me, so I don't feel bad. And so this greed continues from commercial transaction to personal transaction, and it applies in both places.
I mean, the relationship's a great analogy of that, because we will only give, but it has to be because we can take.
100%.
Like, it's very rare that we just kind of, when we wanted our wife, it was really easy to pursue her.
Yeah.
But now that we have her, it's a little more difficult, or it has to value us in return.
Yeah, 100%, man. So this really applies in terms of where does greed comes in? The greed of thinking that is, what you're doing currently for your wife, which is supposed to be the most important person in your life, is sufficient. Well, it's the greed of preserving your energy. It's the greed of not thinking above and beyond on what's obvious. Man, we're greedy all over the map today. We're greedy with money. We're greedy with love. We're greedy with empathizing. We're greedy with affection. We're greedy mainly because the modern society has enabled us to be fucking greedy. We live in a pretty fucking naive life and undisciplined life, because everything is made ready. Fast food, services, everything is on an app. Like, everything is made ready for us, where therefore the discipline of doing things from scratch is no longer there. And as a result of that, we end up being pretty greedy, pretty lazy. Again, coming back to laziness being the source of all. If I'm greedy, it's because I'm lazy.
Yeah, it's also like when you say about the fast food, it's cheaper sometimes to buy fast food than it is to make food from scratch.
It is 100% cheaper now.
That's a difficult realization for families, and being like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to have the common discipline to make sure that my family eats well and healthy. So then I got to go produce more. But then you find yourself in this other greed, because now I don't have something that somebody else has, and I don't want to work for it. I want it now. Same thing with Americans. Americans tend to, they start a job and they immediately want an exit strategy, instead of thinking about something being generational wealth or generational business, right?
100%.
Like you think of, like, even the Europeans are a little bit better about this. Like, oh, how can I pass this on generationally? Immediately we start a startup here and we want out.
Yeah.
That's
great. Well, you start a startup with the intention of exiting, which makes it all about money.
Yes.
Which then makes it all about greed. But you have a story that it's not about money, it's about making impact. But really, I want to create something that has impact on people, but I don't really want to be the stewardship of that impact. So I want to create it, sell it, make money in my pocket, and knowing that one day watching it, oh, this thing has impact on other people because I've sold it. That's greed.
And greed again, I like, shows up in so many ways with the human transaction of personal transaction, also to business transaction. And, something that we do a lot, and then we do with the immersions as well, is that crossing between the two, right? Because that's a difficult thing to cross between personal relationship and business relationship, and then having a better common mission, right?
Yeah.
Like, and if that doesn't blend, there's always greed inside of a workplace, right? Because now I want to step over you. I want to be your boss. You're my boss now, but I want more. And then greed starts to acquire inside of the environment.
100%. And that's why when you began with greed, I wanted to start breaking it down in the context of commerce, a transaction. because it's just more tangible to see greed associated with money. But as a result of it, real greed is between people. Real greed is the greed of love, is the greed of empathy, is selfishness, right? That's the essence of greed. When I'm selfish, I am greedy as fuck. That's what it means. Like literally, it should be a definition in the dictionary. Selfish, greedy as fuck. So that people can get it. This idea of 100% of the benefits for me, 0 for you. That's greed, man. That's selfish. The modern way of conducting these transactions is, hey, 99% benefits for me, 1 for you, just because I feel guilty. But the reality is, I just don't want to feel guilty, so I give you 1. Selfishly for my own feeling, not for you. And I justify that as, hey man, I did my part, you got some, I got some, that's a fair deal. Now you get that. Sometimes it may not be 99, sometimes it's 79-21. But then we justify it even better. That's a fair deal, because. Well, are we advancing the welfare of that relationship when we are in transactions like that? No. We're not. If my focus, if my focus is not on the welfare of the other person, I won't be advancing shit. And that's the inside a relationship. It's really to put ourselves second. And that's not what the personal development industry wants to show you. The personal development industry wants to show you got to put yourself first. Well, yeah, you got to put yourself first in serving.
Yeah. I was just about to say the difference between being selfish and selfless.
100%.
That's a difficult fucking thing. That's a difficult thing. And same thing with why people quit a job is because they feel underappreciated. It's not because of the money that they're making. It's not because of the hours that they're working. They just genuinely don't feel appreciated at the work, which is because somebody above them is greedy and not really showing that selfless act of nature.
100%. The person that's in charge is not distributing the appreciation. And we can argue and say, well, he doesn't distribute it because the person himself is not appreciated. So it's a chain reaction. Yeah, it is. But somebody needs to fucking break the chain at one point, or else you're just a fucking minion. But and also appreciation is not necessarily a corporate thing, man. It's appreciation is a personal thing. If you have it in your character, you have it. If you don't have it, you just don't have it. And period. It doesn't mean that you can't learn, doesn't mean that you can't gain it. But if you continue operating on the same ways that you operated before, what results are you expecting from these relationships? Nothing. The person at the underneath you is going to quit. And you're going to be left with a justification that, well, they don't want this job. They're not qualified. They're all the same. You're just going to end up with some kind of labeling, general labeling. Nobody is advancing. Their welfare is not advancing. Certainly your welfare is not advancing, and the welfare of the organization is not advancing.
Well, you just brought up the idea of that generational, to be selfless generationally, right? Like people don't want to talk about it. People don't want to talk about, hey, my father was abused as a child, and so my father didn't abuse me. He broke the cycle. So then same thing. My father was selfish. He showed me that. I broke the cycle, and now I'm going to be selfless to those around me. Like that's a difficult thing for people.
100%.
To serve those around you is not a concept that we're taught, and not in today's society. How is this serving me versus how can I serve it?
Well, the problem with serve is it's now become something in the words than in the act. So people get satisfied in words than rather the act. I'll give you an example. You have these people constantly that I've learned to ask, how can I help you today? How can I serve you today? On one side, it's a pretty nice thing to do once in a while. You come in at the right angle, in the right moment, in the right time, and you put your hands on somebody's shoulder and say, please tell me what I can do for you, right? And you can get that person to open up in that window and truly do something for them. But if it becomes kind of a commodity, like almost the signature of your fucking email, where's the meaning of it? People don't believe it anymore. Or when they're told, they're like, it just sounds weird, man. I know nothing. I don't want to owe you anything. And because they don't want to owe you, there's no transaction. There's no transaction. And that's greed again. It's greed. It's greed because you're preserving what you want to do for others, but you're pretending that you're doing it. You're actually a man of service.
Yeah, that mobster mentality. Hey, I'm going to do this for you, but then you're going to have to pay me something later.
You're going to have to pay me.
Yeah. And it's very easy for us as man to find ourselves inside that kind of trade, right? Like we moved away from that genuine communal trade of, hey, I'm going to advance us all together.
Yep.
And I like going back to the work environment. When was the last time you actually tried to move your work environment forward by providing for those around you?
100%.
Besides just an income.
Yeah.
Besides just an income.
You know, the enemy does a pretty good job at pulling you down with greed. In fact, he does a pretty good job of pulling you down with anything that you give him. Mm-hmm. You know, you give him lust, he's going to pull you down with that. You give him greed, you give him laziness. Hell yeah, man, he's going to pull you down. You give him you know, you don't do your workout today, you don't do it the next day, you already give him something. You ain't going to do it on the third day, and next thing you know, 30 days you haven't done it. He is very good as he's not waiting for some big mistake of yours and say, I got you. He's going to take whatever you give him. And greed is often something we give all the time. Laziness fuels greed. So if you give the enemy laziness, he'll take you. He'll take you into greed. He'll take you into lust. He'll take you into the other side, man. You know, you'll lose some shit. He'll take you down. He'll take you to the bottom of the fucking pit, and there you are. So greed plays a big role because he can sense greed where you and I are greedy. And greed comes in really from not having a practice of gratitude. Being an ingratitude fuck is the essence of being a greedy motherfucker. Like literally, that's where it comes from. There's nothing worse than an ungrateful customer. There's nothing worse than an ungrateful friend. There's nothing worse than an ungrateful man. The ingratitude is the biggest disease that complements laziness that has produced massive separation between men today.
That sums it up perfectly. The inability to have gratitude is what feeds greed, and greed is almost like a hunger pit. Yeah. Once it starts, you're gonna get hungry more and more for it.
You got it, man. I mean, that's what it is. You know, if you don't if you don't practice gratitude, by default, your status is ungrateful fuck.
I see it as like a gold fever, right? Like I see a man that acquires something. He didn't have it before. He gets it, and now he wants more. Right. Instead of just being happy, like I got some gold out of there. I can buy stuff. I can do stuff. I'm not poor anymore. But now I need more. This is not enough. And it's like, what do you mean it's not enough? Fucking last week you had nothing. So why can't this be enough? Well, I got to keep moving forward. I got to keep grinding instead of just being like, no, I'm going to serve. I'm going to fucking work at it and develop.
That is what you just described. It's the personal development industry of 2023. You always have to have more. It never stopped. The quest of becoming the greatest of the greater, the quest of having more. There is never sufficiency, contentment. You don't reach sufficiency and contentment in wanting always to be the greatest or wanting always more. And you miss out the most fundamental thing that you and I have as a duty, which is service. So really, the purpose of life shouldn't be to become the greatest. The purpose of life should be to become the most useful motherfucker that you can be.
Yeah, and it's gonna fuck you up, because the reality of that in itself is to be present and submitting to where you're at today.
100%.
Like that's a tough fucking thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really looking at your feet. Where your feet are, where you at, bitch, and be grateful that you have your feet on the ground right now, because you don't want to be in the middle of a void, in the middle of a dark, not going up, not going down, not going left, not going right, and burning in fire. I mean, that's a description of hell. You don't want to be in a space where there's no down, there's no up, there's no right, there's no left. Be grateful that God has planted your feet where you are today. If it's in your house, next to your wife, with your kids, you got to be grateful for that. If it's in the middle of a desert and you're feeding some goats or some whatever you're doing, that's what it is. If it's in the middle of a medical office and you're a nurse, look at your feet where you're at today. Like, look at your feet and be grateful where you're at today. That's one of the best exercises you can do. Like right now, if you're listening to this, stop and look at your feet. Unless you're, driving a car, I wouldn't recommend that, because you won't be looking at your feet much. But other than that, like if you literally stop right now and you look at your feet, man, there's this massive massive amount of gratitude that showers over you, and just be grateful in that moment of where you at. Even if you're in a hospital right now with a dying loved one, there is gratitude inside of that if you really dig why your feet are there and why you're there.
Yeah. Also, too, understanding that that doesn't mean to settle. Right?
Yeah,
Like, because it's immediately people will be like, well, if I'm being present in what I'm doing now and I'm okay with what I am, so then that's it. That's it. Like laying up and I'm just going to fucking be like a dog on my back. Like, that's not what we're saying
at all. I mean, if you know, let's just take sports. If you want to be the greatest athlete, right? That's the wrong terminology. You want to be the most useful athlete. Why? Yeah. Because you're inspiring other fucking athletes, man. You're inspiring all the people. I think the terminologies or the language used sometimes is where innocent people get caught up into that game of greed and selfishness without having any desires, but they carry these languages in their mind. But if you're like an athlete and you just stop where you at today, right? Because you say, well, you know, I did good. Then you are never developing that athlete. Your background is all about development of athletes in the past 25 years, continuously contributing into that mentality and way of thinking through the industry that you were present in, which is the development of an athlete. And you have a list of very successful athletes whom you help develop, you know, from college level to NFL to you know, professional level sports. But it's the same pattern and behaviors that there is no finish line. Mm-hmm. And the finish line is literally the difference that we see today. There is no finish line in becoming useful to God. There's no finish line in utilizing your gift as much as you can because it was granted to you by him. It's a divine capability and skills that you have. But motherfuckers want to go around and say, I did this. Motherfuckers want to go around and I work my ass. No, it all started with a blessing, or else you wouldn't be where you at, where your feet are.
Yeah, it's fucked up because the motherfuckers go around being like, well, God's useful to me. like, no, you're useful to God. Sorry, man. I hate to break this to you. But it's a difficult, that's part of the greed in itself, right? Yeah. Like, and the more and more we're sitting here talking about greed at a monetary level is a very small sliver of truly what it is.
Yeah.
It's a very emotional thing that just pulls on you and drives you to not be present, to not be inside of God, not be inside that journey of how do I serve? And that's where people don't understand their purpose, right? Yeah. They get lost.
And greed really sets you up to convince you and to take away the most important thing that you could have on this earth, which is your salvation and which is, you know, eternal life. Greed robs that, because greed says you can partner with God. Yeah. You can partner with Christ and you can contribute to your salvation by doing these things. If you do these things, then you will go in heaven. And this is where you see yourself as a partner with Christ, and where, you know, Christ laying his life on the cross now is not enough. It needed your contribution as well in order for you to be saved. And that is being taught in the majority of religions out there. Billions of people are believing that if they do certain things, then they will be saved. And that's just people not getting the gospel. That's just people not getting the grace of God, the gift of God. There is no greed in grace, period.
Yeah. It's almost like thinking that this is a two-way street. No, God already gave you his love. You have to come the other way to him, right? Like, you literally have to find that.
You have to pray that he wants you to come back the other way. You have to pray that he says, come. Like, you have to pray for that. You have to pray to hear that. Come and do nothing. Come and do nothing. Come and just receive the grace. Your faith is just a gift. Give me the faith. Give me the gift. No, it's the other way. The thinking is wrong. Is the other way. And now it looks like we have to do something to get there. And that's not grace, man. That's greed.
That's greed. Yeah. And the more and more I think about that, the more and more we are like, even a man that suddenly, even like a Christian, they get into it. And then suddenly they're like, well, I got to go to Africa to build a well.
Yeah.
And instead of like, just, you know, and you're right. Africans, they need the well, they need water because they sell Coca-Cola out there, more expensive than actually,
yeah.
Water is more expensive than Coca-Cola, which is fucked up. But at the same time, there's just a local neighborhood that needs help.
Yeah.
There's a local neighborhood that needs your service. There's a local neighborhood that could use that same intensity and that same passion and the same wanting to help than having to go so far.
Well, you touched a very good point, because I've been in Africa. I lived in Africa. I've seen that with my own eyes, literally in the jungles of Uganda. And this is in 2008 or 2000, maybe 10. There was a guy sitting literally in the middle of the jungle selling some shit. They had a kiosk, and he had two items, Coca-Cola and a SIM card. No water, man. And we wanted water because we were thirsty. We couldn't find it then. It's not like it was rare. We finally found water. But like, we had an option, Coca-Cola or a SIM card. I've seen that, what you've seen. I've seen it with my own eyes. And the reason why I bring that up is the reason why a lot of these Christian organizations are in these African countries. It's not really to bring the message of God, but it's to collect some money. It's because now this is a message that pays, and people are willing to pay for it. It's a younger crowd that believes in the message of prosperity, and therefore they're able to convince them, then say, hey, come here and ask for your future and live your best life. Ask for your future for Christ. And the sacrifice you have to give, it's fucked up, man. The sacrifice you have to give is this monetary thing. And they take anything from, and these people don't have much, but these guys take everything. So therefore you have this because it's very popular, evangelizing in Africa. Well, motherfucker, you need to evangelize here in America. You need to evangelize on your own dining table. You need to evangelize in your house. You need to evangelize in your neighborhood. There is something above and beyond than the agenda of evangelization. There is greed going on when you hear about a massive organization going in Africa. Motherfucker, put the effort down here in your neighborhood. Why? Why are you not putting down the effort here? Because you're giving up, man. You're giving up on the game. You're giving up on fighting for supernatural, because everybody wants to be a reasonable naturalism, and they want to think in the philosophy of nature. And as minute you start talking about the realm of supernatural, then you have then you get dismissed. But everything about Christianity is supernatural. Motherfucker, God is supernatural. How are you not going to take that stand?
Yeah, no, and again, it all comes down to your local community, which just starts with your wife, starts with your kids, it starts with your business. But again, the greed thinks we need more, thinks I need to spread it further. And it's like, no, it spreads just fine. The ripple effect works very well in a localized area.
100%. And I mean, you hit a nerve with Africa, because I've been there. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen the shit that has happened there. This is not to dismiss a lot of organizations that are doing good humanitarian work. And there's that's their calling, and they're calling to do those things because God has put them there to do those things. This is not to take, but there is abuse in Africa, and there is abuse. Why? Because they can't. It's fresh meat. It's fresh mindset. There's money to be made. There's plenty of greed in Africa.
Yeah, and let's get it correct here. We support a lot of different things that we don't even need to talk about, because again, it's not a greed thing for us to support those organizations. But there are the inability to find out what's so important to be able to produce what's around you. And again, that's society telling us what is right versus God giving us what is right.
I've seen real sacrifices in Africa. I've seen the doctors and surgeons that are willing to serve in Africa and live a lifestyle of a peasant, but yet serve 18, 19 hours, risk being sick and at diseases. But I've seen nurses, American nurses, down there doing this kind of work because they're called. It's not a job. They would be treated 100 times better in America. They would be living in better houses, driving better cars, being respected by their colleagues more, less in danger of their lives. But they sacrificed all that luxury for the calling, and they have joy serving in those places, and that's all that matters. And that's when God has put you in there. That is grace. That is not greed. Greed is what appears to be grace.
I mean, shit, we see that in the self-development in the coaching industry, where it's the difference between forcing it versus just being able to fall into it, God giving it to you and God saying, hey, you're going to be your pass. Because, again, I never asked to be a coach. It just was that way.
Yeah.
And I find passion inside of it. Is it easy? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
To feel the pain of another athlete, to feel the pain of another man, is that easy? Absolutely fucking not.
Yeah.
Am I in it for money? No, not at all.
Yeah.
I'm into it because I like to advance the commonwealth of those around us.
The door opens up because you happen to be in the hallway, man.
Yeah.
That's what, you're not behind the door knocking at the door, open. You're in the hallway and suddenly the door opens up and you go in. That's the difference. When you talk about those that are forcing it, they're literally behind the door. And if God doesn't open the door, what they do is that they break the door to get in and force themselves inside of that. That's the difference, man.
Yeah. And they don't have the endurance to withstand the time inside of it.
God spits them out.
Yeah.
God spits them out. You broke in. Get the fuck out.
Yeah. Or even those that actually get called and yet take advantage of it for the greed, right? You see this as well. I see that a lot with actually professional coaching, professional athletes, where suddenly they get involved, the price tag shows up, and now they lose focus of genuinely helping out an individual. It becomes a money situation. So, Coach, I want to talk about the actionable item today and specifically put it on exactly what you said in regards to looking down on the ground and knowing where you stand and being grateful for it. It's not a lot of time that we talk about, being grateful, and yet we do. But it's very important that we understand, that you understand today, to take action in your gratitude to God, not just to anything, gratitude specifically to God for being where you're at.
Beautiful. And I want to, that's a beautiful action item, but I want to add one tactical action item that has to do with breaking greed, because it begins with money. I want you to put $100 bill, a $20 bill, and 4 $5 bills in your pocket this week. And I want you to look at the 6 opportunities to give 6 times. And I want you to just don't judge who should get the 5 and who should get the 100. At the point of transaction, reach for the bill, and without knowing which bill you picked out, you just give it to that and surrender to that process. So 1 week, 6 transactions, whether that's a tip, whether that's a homeless, whoever God's put in front of you, whether that's a little kid that is selling lemonade, whoever God's put in front of you, you're not in charge deciding how much you're giving. Your duty is simply to take out the bill and the bill that comes out, and there's plenty of learning inside of that. And that's the cycle that I've used for months to break greed when it comes to giving and money. And it's something that I put out there as a tactical, if you're listening to this, as a tactical action item this week.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Tactical. And then you battle greed and judgment all at the same time. Thank you, Coach. That's beautiful. Remember, follow us on warriorweek.com, also warriorweekpodcast.com. Look at us on YouTube, Warrior Week Podcast, as well as IG and Facebook. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you.
Quit on your wife, quit on your kids, quit on your desires. It's okay to be okay. Manually putting the fucking blindfold on yourself. Tonight, you're gonna find out what power is.